Quiet on set. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Let's Poddy podcast with your host, Benji Weatherly. It's the podcast where you learn absolutely nothing.
All right, here we are, episode 13, 14, or 15. We'll all figure that out later, but we're here at Let's Poddy again, and I'm with a really old man that I've known as old as I am, and one of my best friends that from back in the day when life was good. Remember those days? You know?
Oh, yeah.
We got Rick DeVoe,
Hey.
a.k.a. the manager of the greatest fart joke band of all time, Blink 182. You've had such a history of San Diego bands that the cool thing is I know everything about this guy when I interview or do podcasts. I usually don't know much about the person I'm interviewing. I know too much about him, so I'm going to keep that to myself. Let's start in the beginning. I really, really want people to know our history and the history with Tom DeLonge and Mark and everybody.
Yeah.
It's such a fun path, and I got to see it firsthand. I don't know. I think you're a more raised Northern Cal, right?
Yeah, up in L.A. I grew up, I actually grew up in the San Fernando Valley.
Okay.
And then I surfed Malibu. Mm-hmm. That was my main spot. And then got accepted to SDSU.
Oh, that's how you got down to San Diego?
And once I got to San Diego, I was like,
she gone.
Never going back there.
Totally. I know.
But,
when I first met Rick, I would have been 18 or 19 because we were doing STV, right? Wasn't it
those
STV?
were the days.
Yeah.
Your mom.
No, but I haven't talked about STV on the podcast yet.
STV was amazing.
So,
really?
I haven't yet.
Surf, skate, snow, TV.
Yeah,
and sound. You're like, how do we make music? Surf, skate, snow, sound. STV. Sound. Okay, we'll take it.
So, exactly.
Remember the Halloween party?
That. Yes. So, they were going to go on this because we've never talked about STV, and it was such a big part of a lot of our lives.
Your mom looked so hot that night. But anyways, that's a different story.
Okay, we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
But the coolest thing about what we're talking about right now is when I was 18, I think, I was, a pro surfer traveling and just starting to come into my own. And my mom, bless her heart, wanted to start a surf, skate, snow TV, basically like a Wayne's World before Fuel TV.
Pre-Fuel.
Pre-Fuel, yeah.
You were on it. You actually
we were ahead of the game. We just didn't realize that the networks and everything were monsters. And like that industry, you had to have lawyers on your beck and end. And
right.
What happened was I was not really involved with STV other than being on it and like being a character and like surfing and having fun. But you have to imagine we were creating a TV show, and I give a lot of the credit to Greg Browning, by the way. Greg Browning was one of our first editors.
Yes.
They would edit it in our living room with one of those boards that were like spinning knobs and everything. And Greg Browning and my brother Jason Weatherly, Jason Wilson, my other brother-in-law, I can't remember who the editors were.
You had Tim.
Tim came in after a little while.
Oh, he was in after. He was actually in a Blink 182 video.
Yeah. So this is pre-Blink, okay? So this is why this is an exciting story. So we had this TV station, and it was just like Wayne's World because we would make it in our living room, and a lot of the stuff was in PB on the boardwalk where we'd film like homeless people and interview them, and Blair had his own it's called Blair's Corner, a little friend of our, Blair Marlin. And
big time agent.
Big time agent now.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing is the reason why I'm bringing this up is because that's how I got to meet Rick. Was he was managing bands. I want you to tell me the beginning because it was called Red Eye Cargo Records or something. What was it called?
Well, okay. Well,
how did your scene start, and then how did I meet you through STV?
Okay.
I don't remember how.
I'll whip it up in a nice little package here. So first of all, I got into promoting music and everything was because I was a surfer. I was obsessed with ska bands, Specials, Madness, those kind of bands. I was so into that stuff. I was also obsessed with the PSAA. Do you remember the PSAA?
100%.
So the PSAA would put on contests in Malibu, and we would go down there. That was my spot where I hung out and all my friends, and we would watch all these guys that I thought were like, they were my heroes, right. Dino and Dinos and Lambrisi.
The Bud Tour.
The Bud Tour. The real tour only would go to Huntington Beach, the OP Pro. But so the PSA would come to town, and I was obsessed with like the events behind it and just the whole atmosphere of promoting a surf event. So I started the surf club at my high school. I put on my first fundraiser was in the high school auditorium with my friend Casey Fleming's band called the Czechs. And it was a ska band.
Wait, what town is this?
This was in Woodland Hills at El Camino High School, the home of Bad Religion, the home of me.
That's out by Thousand Oaks, kind of?
Woodland Hills, Calabasas area, like right next to Calabasas.
And how old are you?
I'm 17 at this time.
And you're throwing events already?
Yeah, well, that was my first one. I was the president of the surf club. And I put on my own surf contest. So I kept going over to the PSA, going, hey, can I get in? No one wanted to talk to me. I was a Grom. So I decided to put on my own events. And I actually got to meet, I met Casey Fleming, who's a good longtime friend of mine, and he was running Pacific Sunwear. And it was there was Val Surf, Glenn Kennedy Surf Shop, Glenn's passed away, and Pacific Sunwear. And that was back at the time when Pacific Sunwear actually had surfboards in their shop and wax. It was sort of like a surf shop, but not really. Mm-hmm. But Tyler Calloway was the manager of this store.
Hey, that's where he's from?
Yep. And I just saw him at the event the other day. And Tyler went on, to great things with FCS and lots of great stuff.
Rusty. He was
and Rusty. And Willie Morris was part of it. Mm-hmm. He's passed away a few years ago. He ended up being a big mentor for my children and everything for fishing and stuff. So right out the gates, I met these powerhouses, and we put on these contests for my high school, and they were sponsored. They were kind of along the theme of what happened this weekend, the fun part, the craziness of it, at Seaside. But we were doing them at County Line and Zuma Beach and Port Hueneme and stuff like that. Some of the beaches were localized. It was kind of weird back in the 80s doing that stuff. But I put an event on in my high school auditorium with the Czechs, and everything was going great. Everyone was there. Yeah, they were called, Casey Fleming's band was called the Czechs. They dressed up like a ska band, but they just played, but I don't know. I don't remember what they played. But they played the cover song, the theme song of Batman.
Nice.
Huge slam pit broke out. The whole thing, I remember my principal and everyone, they're like, whoa, they freaked out because there's a slam pit in my auditorium at lunchtime. And I remember looking at this, and the adrenaline that was going through my skin was no. This is what I meant to do.
Oh, that's so cool.
And so it was surfing and punk rock in a room that no one saw it coming, and it blew doors, and everyone said it was the best thing ever. I paid the checks with grilled cheese sandwiches and milk. I think that's what they got paid. But so I took that stoke and of combining surfing and music, and I started slowly promoting my own shows. And along the way, I made a lot of friends. And some of those friends were a band called Incubus. They all grew up surfing Malibu with us. Mikey and Brandon and Jose. We all hung out at Malibu all the time. So I would hire the Incubus guys to flyer my shows. And so we named them the Big Dummy Jams.
Oh, that's where it came from?
Yeah, so the Big Dummy Jams, because all the surfers at my school were tall like us, you and I, and kind of lanky and dumb, kind of we'd laugh, we'd run into there'd be bread trucks, we think it'd be funny, chase them, run, the truck would stop, we'd slam, and or jump off the pier, or just do dumb things that. So at our school, we were known as the Dummies. All the surfers were known as the Dummies, and so I started doing these big dummy jams because it was really just all my friends from the beach would come to my shows. So Casey brought me, because he was at Rusty at the time, he brought me a surf film. And he's like, dude, let's promote a surf film at the Rocks, at the Whiskey. I think it was the Whiskey. And we did a small one, and it was great, and it was chaotic. And I was like, okay, hold on. I'm just promoted a show in Hollywood.
Wow.
With surfers.
You're 18?
Yeah, I'm about 18 at this point. And it worked. And so then I'm like, okay, this is crazy. So I get accepted to SDSU, and I moved to San Diego. And I moved down to a place called Mission Beach, California, South Mission. Mm-hmm. And man, it changed. It was just insane. Early 90s, I'm now just down here. I get my wife to come down. She gets accepted to SDSU. So now my whole world is down here. And I met my buddy Brad Teufel. He now owns 9 McDonald's in Phoenix, and he's really, really big time and all that. he introduces me to a video called Momentum. And, VCRs, they were like big tapes, and we'd put the tapes in. I would sit down and eat my cereal, and I'm watching this movie, and I'm just like, this is crazy. This is crazy. Who's Benji Weatherly? Like, who these guys? Wow. Like, obviously you heard of Kelly Slater and stuff like that, but I got turned on to
the music, right?
Well, that was what I was getting to. Was not only these crop of surfers that were coming up, yourself and Machado and Knox and all that, and Dorian, but it was the music. And so I just was freaking out. And I remember calling one of my very best friends, who you mentioned the other night, is Paul Gomez, and we were talking about this stuff, and he's like, I'm at Billabong, and I'm like, and he had a love for music too, and events. And so I'm like, hey, I want to put some punk rock shows together. Can you help me out? And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna help sponsor your shows and things like this. So I started managing a band called Unwritten Law. So Unwritten Law was, and still is, a very great punk rock band. And I started getting them on shows because I was promoting shows. Remember, I got them on Rancid at the Whiskey, I think it was the Whiskey again. I started getting my bands placed. And so I'm sitting here promoting shows now in Hollywood, and I'm promoting shows in Mission Beach, small shows. I haven't met Taylor Steele yet. But I'm like, I'm just freaking out on what he did to me and all my other friends, because it was so influential. I wanted to surf better. I watched the movie every day. Everything Timmy Curran said the other night, yeah, I watched that same movie. I did it over and over and over again, just like everyone else did. So I walk out my door in South Mission. I go down to the boardwalk, as I did every single morning, to check the waves, and I look down at the jetty, and I see a guy surfing, or maybe two guys, that, I surfed the jetty a lot and right next to it. And I'm like, hold on a second. Wait, that guy surfs different than anyone I've ever seen. I'm like, wait a minute, I wonder if, and I look over on the jetty, and I saw the silhouette of this guy with his hat backwards and this long, in like a camera. And I'm all, and I was living with Greg Strugach at the time. Remember Strugy, Greg? the Russian grommet? Even when he was 30, he was still sponsored by Rusty. Yeah. No. But so we were literally, I'm all, dude, I think Taylor Steele is down there filming Pros.
And it was Poston probably, huh?
Well, I knew what Poston looked like. He might, but I think it was Dorian or Keith Malloy. It was someone that wasn't from there.
Right.
So I run down the beach, and I run up to him, and I'm all, that has to be Taylor Steele.
Did you go right up to Taylor?
Dude, I'm like, before I fanned out on him, I'm like, I'm watching, so I'm like, okay, those guys have stickers on their boards. Stickers are a big thing in the 90s. Like, if you had a Billabong sticker on your board, like, dude, you were gnarly.
Yeah, because they didn't give those away.
They didn't give those away. And Paul Gomez was very particular on who got a sticker on their board, and it was a big deal. The 90s, 80s and 90s surf culture was so different than today.
It was so different.
Poor kids. Yeah. They missed it. But anyways, so I put two and two together. I'm like, that has to be Taylor Steele. So I walk up, and I just said, hey, and I start talking to him, and it turns out it is. And we start chatting it up, and I'm watching these guys just do blowtails and things that I've never seen. And I told him what I was doing, and I asked him, I said, hey, I have an idea. Like, let's take some of the bands from your movies, and let's premiere your movie, and let's have them play. And he was like, he just thought it was a rad idea. And that was it, man. That was really how it all started for me. I mean, directly with the surf world. That's how I got to meet you. I got to meet Kelly,
Let me
Rob.
cut you off. This is too great. So you guys, what you're hearing right now, which is why I wanted Rick DeVoe on my podcast more than anything, is you're listening to the beginning of Taylor Steele's surf culture, the way it happened in the very beginning. So Big Dummy Productions was what it called it, Big Dummy. I would see it on all the flyers for all of our things, and in the beginning, I didn't know what Big Dummy was. I was like, what's Big Dummy Productions, whatever. I didn't know how it started and how it all came together, but to hear you tell the story now, so this moment of him running up to Taylor at that jetty is so important in surf culture. That's what makes this so insane, is you don't even realize how much impact that had on every one of us, every kid, everything, because what happened after him and Taylor decided to do this tour was the reason why it was such a hit. It was the surfing was unbelievable, the movies were great, but it was these tours. These tours, dude, you got to see your heroes, surfer guys that were there, and then you got to see these bands that were in the movies live in the, like he said, the mosh pit. That like it all created from all these things.
It was very special,
and it's so cool to hear the beginning. So I want you to keep going, but I just want people to know what he's talking about is the beginning of the '90s surf culture that became Momentum Generation, and it's so neat to hear his side of it because I'm always just like I would show up at these events. I was 16 the first Momentum, and then like 17, 18 they got better and better, and it would be like, dude, Blink's playing this is before Blink, like Pennywise and Strong Monkey, and I would be there and I had no idea how these bands were showing up or how these tours were made. I was a teenage kid. Now to find out that like my boy was at high school throwing these parties and decided, you know what, and then seeing Taylor on a jetty and saying we need to do this, thinking now how crazy that is looking back.
I just saw his silhouette. I saw his silhouette, and I just knew it was him. I knew it.
Moment. And so you guys, the very first tour was Momentum 2, right? Or was it 1?
Yeah. So anyways, I'm going to give a little quick.
Yeah.
So I took this to Hollywood. So what that means was, so once Taylor said I found out who, I was managing Unwritten Law. So obviously I have like incentive. Like I want to get Unwritten Law in there. I want Unwritten Law to be on these soundtracks because I know it'll sell. So I found out who Pennywise's agent was, and I became friends with Pennywise. And I went into Hollywood and met their agent, Andy Summers. I mean, gray hair guy. And I go and I walk, it was at ICM, I think, at the time. I don't know if ICM is still an agency, but I sit down with him, and I'm just like wearing a Billabong shirt, and I'm a surfer dude in Hollywood at this big agency. And I sit him down, and he's from New York, and he's not a surfer or nothing. And I paint him this whole picture of what I want to do. And he goes, all right, yeah, actually, I get it. I'm going to help you do it, and I'm going to give you a producer's fee, $500 a show, and we're going to route tours. And you can have, and he ended up picking up Unwritten Law to book them, which was huge for me. So he booked Pennywise, he booked Unwritten Law, and he helped me build the package with the surf movie and sell it to the promoters all on the East Coast. Remember the East Coast tour? I mean,
how many tours were there? And
there was multiple ones. So Momentum 2 was the very first one I did with Taylor.
Yep.
And we did 2 shows, if I recall, at the La Paloma Theater. Okay. Those were the two.
Beginning, so where Paul Gomez jumped off the stage?
Yeah, that was where Paul jumped off. Momentum, I didn't have a part of. Momentum 1.
Right.
But I believe Taylor did a premiere at
We did it at the On Fire, the company, Ronnie and Rusty's.
Oh, right.
That was the first Momentum premiere in their parking lot.
Okay.
That was the very first Momentum premiere. I was 16, I remember.
So that was before me. Mm-hmm. But Momentum 2.
But it wasn't like your first.
No. Momentum 2 was nuts. We did 2 shows.
So the first ones were the La Paloma, and then you guys.
I think Momentum 2 were the only ones I did because it was so new. It was just like, let's see what we can handle. Mm-hmm. So I got hold of Pennywise, and I remember calling Fletcher, and I said, "Hey, I want to promote these shows. This is my idea." And he's like, "Okay." And I go, "So how much will you charge me?" And he's like, "Well, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Well, come on." So I got him down to $800
for the band
for Pennywise. So I paid him. I was the promoter. I was taking all the risk, except for Alan at the La Paloma, which he took a lot more risk. But I convinced him to do it. Taylor was kind of like, he was still not known in North County, but he started to get, his mom was selling real estate. It was a family kind of thing. But he bid on it and allowed us to do it. So I negotiated, and at this time, I think I'm 22, I negotiated for 2 nights. I'm all, let's do 2 nights. And
were they back-to-back nights?
They were back-to-back.
Same bands?
It was a Friday, Saturday, I think, yeah. Wow. And so I think we had this band called Electric Kool-Aid, who were, I just put them on because the guy had a skinhead. I thought he was rad. Cool. I knew nothing about it. I believe Sprung Monkey and Pennywise. And I remember a couple nights before, I was up in Malibu at my nephew's house, Keegan Gibbs, he was a little kid at the time, with Brad Teufel, I think, and we were up there surfing or something, and Alan calls me panicking. So if you guys can understand what Alan is,
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain him.
He's the Carl from Caddyshack. He's the guy that is the property manager, if you will, of
he runs
La Paloma Theater in Encinitas.
The most iconic surf film.
It's our Greek theater of surfing.
Yeah.
Like, it's so legendary. Every big surf movie that's ever come out in 30 years has been
they
there.
premiere there.
Yeah.
But he calls me a couple nights before, and he starts. This is when he had hair. He starts snapping at me. You didn't tell me who these guys are. I dug in and I found out they caused a riot in Hollywood, and they have a big skinhead following, and you didn't tell me that. You hid that from me. And I'm like, well, it's gonna be fine. Yeah. Like, it's gonna be fine. Like, just relax.
You must have been
He was
so
shitting his pants.
I bet.
And so I remember the morning of the show. I was down in Mission Beach. I got up extra early, like 5:30. Our tickets were made. I made all the tickets at Kinko's. I did all the flyers at Kinko's. Cut and paste. So we're just, and the only way we secured them, like, to make sure they were original tickets, was I went and got like a stamp at like the 99-cent store. And if the ticket had the stamp of a ghost, it was like a real ticket. It was like
Unbelievable.
It was crazy. But I remember surfing that morning. I went out and I paddled out the jetty, and the waves were really glassy, 1 foot. I was the only one out, and I was like, something big is going to happen today, and this is probably like the biggest thing in my life so far. And I remember I was just surfing the jetty, and I just remember taking that time to just really get ready. So I went into Encinitas that night, went over to Taylor's. I got to see his editing lab, and I started meeting all the boys. You know, I met Kelly and Rob, and it was so cool. I met Taylor, and he had nicknames for everybody. I think Taylor's
That was when he lived with his parents with the basketball.
Yeah, up in the thing. And I remember he told me Taylor's nickname was Bonehead, and Taylor didn't like that.
He hated that.
Yeah, he didn't like that. Sorry, Taylor. But that is surf.
That is it.
Culture history. But I was just like so stoked. Betty was so nice. I met Cody. He was just a grom. And then we put these shows on, and, you know, this was much bigger than anything I had done. I'd done one. Well, I mean, I sold out the whiskey, the same kind of thing, but not with Pennywise, you know. Pennywise had, I mean, the theater held 390 people, but it was seated up to the stage, and Pennywise is a slam band.
Yeah, how did they get the seats out? I don't remember.
If I recall, we agreed to take out, once Alan accepted the fate that this was coming to the venue, he's like, well, then I'm taking out the first 3 rows. I'm like, okay, that's probably smart.
Yeah.
You know? So he took out he unbolted all the seats. So we had a slam pit, if you remember.
Yeah, I totally
We had a slam pit, but there was no barricade. And what a barricade basically is just a big, like, it comes in pieces and it clicks together, and it's a shield to protect the artists in the stage. There was no barricade. These kids were squished right up to the edge. Both shows sold out. Okay? Half of the people drove from Hermosa Beach. The other half were from either Mission Beach or from Costa Mesa. The Volcom crew came down because Pennywise was sponsored by Volcom. Troy Eckert, Wooly. I mean, you name it. Everyone who was anyone was there. And Balzer, I mean, like, dude, it was just like insane, but it got so crazy. We could have done probably 700 tickets a night that
easily,
thing.
yeah.
Kids were climbing up the walls, up the catwalks. They were sneaking in, breaking through windows. I mean, it really, the building got thrashed a little bit. And, you know, dude, I didn't have insurance. I didn't have anything. I just had, like, I didn't even have any money to pay for them. Like, if they didn't do it, like, I didn't know how I was going to pay for anything. But we got the projector going. We got the movie going. Taylor kind of handled that part. I got the bands. I got the PA. And it all came together, and it was very legendary. It was still, I mean, years ago, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, a guy paddles up to me. He's like, hey, are you Rick DeVoe? I'm like, yeah. He's like, did you do Big Dummy? I'm like, yeah. He's like, dude, I was at night 2 or whatever of the Momentum thing, and I had never experienced anything like that in my life. And all the surfers, they were young. Kelly had hair. Rob had an afro.
17.
I mean, Benji was so good looking. Every girl was after Benji. Jason, your brother, had hair. Joe Curran looked still like Joe Curran. But it was so cool. And as a surf fan, you know, the farthest I ever got in my pro surf dream was like maybe a round 2 at the WSA at Zuma Beach. That, you know, like we all want to be pro surfers, but now I'm hanging out with the real thing. And I'm just so obsessed with punk rock and music. So it was like a high that I can't explain. I actually got to make money. Taylor got massive exposure. Pennywise got paid. It all worked out. And that birthed the Focus Tour.
Right.
And the Focus Tour, we took it to the East Coast and we took it to Hawaii. An interesting story about that Hawaii show, I believe we booked Sublime to open.
Was Focus the time where we got dressed in disco
You got
outfits?
dressed in disco outfits.
That was the best premiere.
We all met up. It was, I believe the club in Honolulu was called After Dark.
Yeah.
I think it was called After Dark. And so we took that model, and then when Focus came out, Focus was huge. Now I had it. All right, now I did 2. Let's do a West Coast tour, an East Coast tour, and Hawaii. And it was like insane. You know, like I can't explain it. Now Kelly I think he's already maybe got a couple world titles under his belt. He's dating Pamela Anderson. Taylor is just like coming into like becoming one of the most iconic surf film directors of all time. Things were incredible. These tours were insane. It was chaos, and Pennywise did it, and Unwritten Law once again. So I got my band to be on it.
So that was the first time Unwritten Law got on tour?
Yeah. So I got Unwritten Law on the soundtrack. If you can get your song on the soundtrack, dude, your band was going to blow up, like in some level, some way, shape, or form. But I was just ahead of the curve. I didn't know what I stumbled into, and I stumbled into. I don't know if Taylor knew what he was stumbling into, but we were creating something together that was next level. Like it was turning heads. And so I put this tour together. It was like that summer. And I remember I got a call from Bill Silva, who's a massive promoter in San Diego. And he calls me up, and I'm just this punk rock surf kid dude that's just putting on things that I love. And I got Billabong to sponsor it, and they were helping out. And he offers me a job right out of the gates. Like he's like, I need, because I actually got an Offspring show off. I promoted an Offspring show at the Whiskey, another surf movie. I don't remember if it was a Taylor movie, but I think it was a different one. But that got him to play, same formula. And he just couldn't understand how he couldn't get the Offspring show in San Diego because I had kind of a lock on these Epitaph bands.
Right.
It was just really bizarre.
He was calling this surfer kid to help him out. And Bill Silva would have Elton John, Whitney Houston. I mean, he was
Stones.
the Stones.
Back then it was called the
Golden
Ticket? The stadium.
Oh, yeah.
It was the Murph. Jack Murphy Stadium.
Yeah.
You know, for those old school Charger fans. And so he's calling me up and he's like, I'll pay you $25,000 a year and all your expenses. I'm all,
what the heck?
I already had this whole tour done. Like this was under my thing. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, $25,000 a year to put on concerts and marketing and promotion and travel. And like, dude, I'm in. So I put these tours on. I had this tour going and I already started working for Bill now, like a month into it. And he's like, okay, well, when you're on the road, I want to give you this cell phone. I'm all, what? And he hands me like one of those Charlie's Angels, like
out of a briefcase.
Dude, it was so weird. I'm like I didn't even know what it was. So, of course, when we were on tour, we just kept using it and calling. I had no idea, dude, that the cell phone bill was
Is that
the
one my brother uses in the surf movie? Remember the one?
It might be.
He's holding it up at Seaside, and it's that phone.
It's a big one, but
it's so funny.
You know, I remember Taylor's like, I'm gonna call someone, and like Fletcher, and like I just used it. I didn't know. You know, I had no idea.
It costs $100 a minute.
But those shows were incredible on the East Coast, and that's where I got to meet Kelly. And I remember our first show, we rolled up, and it was finals time. It was in the fall, so I was getting ready for all my exams and stuff. And we pulled into Melbourne. We worked with a promoter named Fat Harry. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that name?
No.
Okay, so Taylor will remember Fat Harry.
Was that the one with the strip bar in the back?
Yes.
Aha! That story's next level.
Well, that was shit. No.
That was the story.
That's
of my
Orlando.
life.
That actually was Orlando, but that was a Fat Harry show. So So here we are, first show, Paul Gomez, when he was like
Big guy.
big Paul Gomez, long hair, scary. We're all sitting in the parking lot. Pennywise just played, and I'm just like in awe. Prior to that, someone broke into our car and stole all my backpack with all my final exams. And we actually ended up finding who it was. A kid ratted on him, and me and Pennywise and Greg Browning and I think some other guys.
Remember this story.
We went and found the kid's house and went and broke into his house, and I got my bag back. That's all I took. That's all I took.
But this is your final exams of college?
Yes, I was
This
going.
is like Almost
SDSU.
Famous, the movie, right? you got Fletcher, 6'8", just scary as hell, breaking in to get your stuff back.
We got all my stuff back. I swear it's a true story. The kid was scared to death when they heard Pennywise wanted to beat him down, but like all the it was so cool that everyone supported me.
Yeah.
And it was only a few blocks down the street, but some kid ratted on him. But anyways, so the show happens in Melbourne. It was like in a strip mall.
Did you pass the exam?
Yeah, of course, dude.
That would have been odd if he got it, broke back in, and then failed.
It was just like, this is my career. I don't care what's going on econ, like whatever. It's so dumb. So but I'm carrying books from SDSU and stuff. But anyways, so our show ends, and we're all sitting in a strip mall. That's typical Melbourne Beach, Florida. Yeah. Strip mall. The venue was in a strip mall. The ceiling was 8 feet high. The stage was a foot.
I remember that place.
Hot box. I mean, CJ... Damo, they were like little kids. Damo, I think that was his first show. He was 12. Hobgood.
Yeah.
And so we're all sitting out there, and this car comes burning into the parking lot, shows over, just pulls up, and he's like, "Where's Kelly Slater?" And we're like, Gomez gets up, he's like, "Why? What's up?" He goes, "You tell him to watch his back, dude. Wobassa." And Paul's like, "Get out of here!" And we all chase the car.
What's
and they burned out.
Man?
Wobassa.
Wobassa?
It's a town. So I guess some guys wanted to beat up Kelly.
Of course they do. I still want to beat up Kelly.
Yeah, but they were like, want to be like gang member type.
And they were just mad because girls liked him. And
I don't know what it was, but I'll never forget that. It was just like, "Joe, we're going to get him," or something like that. And Gomez is like. It's
part of the movie right here.
Gomez is like kind of scary at this time. This is young Paul Gomez. Fletcher, like these guys, they
got out of there quick.
I was like, where's this going, And so that was night one, and then then we went to Orlando, and I remember sitting next to Kelly. I told him this the other night. I was like, "Dude, all I remember was I'm sitting next to freak. Like, this is so rad, like Kelly Slater and and everyone in the car, and we're driving, and he's sitting here telling me stories about him and Pamela Anderson, like radical stories.
That's so cool.
And I'm sitting here going, "What the hell?" It was just really cool, and the shows were amazing. Unwritten Law was there, and that was the night in Orlando. It wasn't the strip club night. That was the next tour. Fletcher, we all go to get beer and stuff at a 7-Eleven after the show. The show was raging, and we pull into a 7-Eleven parking lot, and I put the rental car, the van, in my name. I rented from Hertz, and I go in and we're getting beer and stuff, and I look over, and the Unwritten Law guys are kind of passed out in the back of the van, and I see Fletcher sitting in the driver's seat of the van. I left it running because it was hot. It was air conditioning, and I'm like, "No, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing?" And he locks the door, puts it in reverse, and takes off. And Fletcher steals the van that I rented for the Focus tour. And takes off. And so these other people that were with us, this one girl and stuff, I'm like, "Hey," I can get my van. And my band is in the back of this. And Taylor might have been back there. I don't even remember. He joyrides the van. He takes off. And we're driving at like 1:30 in the morning. And I'm chasing Fletcher. And I remember we're going down this back street.
Oh, my God.
We're in a back street. And it's pitch dark. And he stops. I'm like, "Oh, I got him. I'm going to get out." But he backs up, and I look, and there's like a dirt pile and a chain link fence that's chain link, like guarding an orange orchard, because it's Orlando, oranges. And I'm like, "What are you going to do?" He backs up and guns it, jumps the dirt, smashes into the chain link fence, breaks the chain link fence. It's wrapped around my van. Oh, my God. He's driving through this orange orchard. Just dirt. I'm like looking at him going, like, I couldn't even register it. Okay, and plus remember, Unwritten Law and maybe Taylor Steele are in the back of this van. I don't even remember. And I'm like, what the hell? And it was like, so obviously the car that I was in, we couldn't chase them. So I had to go around on the streets. He goes through the other side of the field, smashes through the other chain link fence out onto the main road.
The van just destroyed.
Dude, he's driving our tour van down the street with sparks because the chain link fence is dragging on the street. Sparks are just flying. And I'm like, I'm in so much trouble. I'm in so much trouble.
And how old is Fletcher at this point? 22,
I mean,
24?
I don't know. Fletcher,
He's
I mean,
probably the
he's,
same
I
age.
think he's like, he's about 4 or 5 years older than me. So he's probably like 27.
27, and he's the biggest man. We're talking Fletcher Pennywise, guys.
Fletcher
And
Draghi.
He is bigger than life, man.
Okay.
And he's flying now with your rent card,
dude,
your credit card. You're 24. You're a loser.
I'm like watching my tour van and chain link fence, and I just was like, just back off, let him go. Hopefully he'll get arrested or something.
Oh my God.
I didn't even care at that point. I was so pissed, and it was just, I'll never forget that. Like the sparks were so
How did it come
gnarly.
to a conclusion? Did he show up at the hotel?
I'll tell you how it ends. So we get to the hotel, and I'm late. So we get up. There's now 2 a.m. He's in the lobby, and he's all, Ricky, get over here. And Browning is there, and I think they might have already like lit off like a fire extinguisher on someone or something. That was like a typical Greg Browning South Bay thing. And he's sitting. He's all, this is how it's going to go down. And he takes a stapler off of the counter, and he starts stapling his arm. And I'm like, oh, what does that mean?
Doing?
He goes, we're going to say the van got stolen, and you're going to go with that story, and we're going to get away with it. So I'm just like, dude, I was just so like tripped out. So in the morning, I got in the van. I didn't buy the story, and I drove to the airport, and I ditched it there. And this was, and I turned. I think I got on the plane, and I went home. And I was just like, dude, this sucks. So 2 days ago, I'm trying to rent a car because I'm going to Alaska this weekend.
This is still going. What
No,
happened?
dude.
No, but what
I'm
happened?
on the ban for life. We'll never let you rent cars from Hertz or Avis again. It's in the record still.
So what? Did you have to pay for the van?
No. I'm not allowed to rent cars from Hertz or Avis ever again to this day. And it's just like insane how that haunts me. I mean, you know how hard it is if you're on a business trip trying to rent a car and you can't because of what happened.
funny.
So that was that tour. Fletcher, Pennywise, Unwritten Law, Momentum, the pros from that time. That it was all this just one giant thing that was building, which led to the Good Times tour. And that involved Blink-182.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. And Australia.
Yeah.
And it just kept getting better and better. And
Did you get better at your job throughout
yeah,
this?
I'll tell you how I started working with Blink. This is for any Blink-182 fans. This is how it all happened for me. I had promoted all these great shows, and Soma, which was the big club in San Diego, had shut down. They lost their lease. And so I was coming up with all these shows. And fortunately, I convinced Fat Mike of NoFX to let me promote a show. Once I was able to promote a NoFX show, it was kind of like, all right, I got all the biggest ones. Right. So now I have this like great track record. So I'm working at Bill Silva's. I've been there for like a month or two. And my assistant, it was weird. She's like, hey, there's some guy here named Tom that wants to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, send him in. So he walks in, and it's this tall, skinny guy, and he's got like acne and chains and all this stuff. And I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, hey, I'm Tom from Blink. And I'm like, hey, what's up? I'm like, yeah, I've heard of your band. Never seen him play before. And he's like, dude, I'm in a pop punk rock band, and you do the best shows. Big Dummy. Those are the shows. Like you said earlier, the flyer. You saw Big Dummy on a flyer, you knew it was going to be a good one. And he's like, would you manage our band? And I go, huh. I go, so you played in San Diego? He's like, yeah, we can do like 300 tickets at Soma and on the side stage, I'm like, you never played anywhere. He's all, I'm like, no. He's all, you're a 3-piece, and at this time, if you recall, Green Day was just wrote Dookie. Dookie was coming out, or Kerplunk. Maybe Kerplunk was still the Green Day, but Dookie was in the mix. So, you know, everyone was in love with Green Day, dude.
Right.
They were so rad,
Right.
you know? And I'm like,
That album was unbelievable.
oh yeah, still to this day. We went and saw them at the stadium last summer, and I'm like, hey, they're the best.
holds
They're the
up.
best punk rock band of all time.
Yeah, they're pretty.
So I'm like, 3-piece Green Day. Like, I'm like, yeah, I'll manage you. Sight unseen. Never saw Blink 182 at the time. Blink play ever. And I'm a fireman, I'm going to fire and I drive a concrete truck and I drive trucks in Signal Hill in LA and stuff. I'm like, dude, let's do it. That's how I found Blink 182 or Blink that turned into Blink 182.
This is a huge moment because when you left, you actually had to leave Bill Silva's, right?
That was a little.
They signed with MCA, right?
Well, MCA is a record label, but this is literally, you understand, like Blink was a indie band. Oh, they had got signed to Cargo Records. You mentioned Cargo.
That's what it was.
So Cargo.
And that was over by the Costco, right?
Yeah, it was by Costco in
with
PB. There was a record label there, and they had, the guy's name was Eric, and they had their finger on some pulse. Like we had Rocket from the Crypt and Drive Like Jehu and Lucy's Fur Coat. San Diego had a scene happening, and here comes Blink, right? So there was other bands there like Flat in Manhattan. I don't know if you remember them. Honey Glaze. We had some bands that were like really cool. Jewel was from here. And, she's from Alaska, but, you know, she kind of grew here. So San Diego was kind of getting on the map with some cool stuff. But no one was really punk rock yet.
Right.
There was also Unwritten Law. Unwritten Law was really the biggest one. And then here comes Blink. And so I agree to manage Blink. And I'm like, all right, well, I have this in with my buddy Taylor Steele. And here's Unwritten Law. Here, meet Unwritten Law. So I met them. I introduced them. And I start plugging in. So now you understand, I'm a promoter with money, and I can write my own ticket, and I can produce and promote whatever I dreamed up.
Yeah.
That was the 90s.
That was the 90s.
That was the 90s.
And what year was it that when I lived with Tom, was that when, because you lived down the street.
Yeah,
he would wake us up every morning to like go surf and like.
Dude, I have a funny story.
He would mess with us so bad. But so I was 20.
Yes.
We had our 21st birthdays together.
You did.
So that would have been right when you
that was later. So you got to understand.
So he was only 18 or 19.
When I met Tom, he was 18.
Okay.
So this is when you lived with Tom. That was in 94. Was when I did the Focus tour, and that's when I met Tom. But I plugged Tom in Blink kind of like spring 95. You know, like
so I lived with him in 95.
Well, not yet. I think you were more like 96 or 97.
Because it was the show.
The show,
was the one where he wrote that song Mutt.
Mutt, yeah.
So that would have been, and that was the Dude Ranch time, right?
Yeah, right. So when I signed them, they were still working on Cheshire Cat. So my name is actually in the Cheshire Cat. So that's how I actually.
Carlsbad. Remember Tom was living in Carlsbad with that roommate that was in the photo of the cover shot?
Yeah. He did live somewhere
random up there.
And he was obsessed with aliens and conspiracy stuff then too. I remember I went over to his house.
He had the VCR tapes was all blurry. He'd make me watch.
So boring. I was like, wow.
Oh no.
So this is a couple years, I think, before you and Tom DeLonge lived together in PV. So we start plugging in Blink, and 95, I remember one of the big kind of historic shows that I promoted, it was at the Long Beach Pyramid in conjunction with the U.S. Open of surfing.
Okay.
And we did everybody, dude. We had Lagwagon, Blink, Unwritten Law, maybe Face to Face. It was like all the B-level punk rock bands. I didn't have Pennywise, Bad Religion, NoFX, Offspring, Green Day, Sublime. It was like the B-level ones.
Yeah.
But it was enough, Sack Lunch.
Yes.
So this is when Rob Machado wanted to be a punk rocker too. Right. And he had a really good band called Sack Lunch. And I managed Sack Lunch too. I had my fingers in all these bands. You know, like I didn't really make any money with any of them that I recall, except for Blink later on. And then that led to Pennywise and Newfound Glory and stuff. But it was really the beginning of the next generation of this punk rock scene. It was the younger bands, and Fat Records was getting really popular, and those were all the like bands that Fat Mike signed and NoFX would take on tour. And The Offspring was already pretty big. They wrote "Come Out and Play," you know, and all those big Offspring songs, and he even signed he started a label called Nitro and signed Guttermouth, and I'm sure you remember some of these bands.
All that. Oh, yeah.
So the punk rock scene was growing rapidly, and the snowboard scene was really coming into its own. Like snowboarding got really popular.
Yep.
DC was being born around this time. ASR was really popular.
Yeah.
And for those who remember that stuff, like puffy shoes and, you know, skateboarding was very influential, but I kind of had a lock on the surf side, and a lot of the snow stuff started to come in my way too. So I'm sitting here now promoting Rancid at the YMCA skate park featuring Larry Haynes's Fluid Vision movie. And, you know, it's just like I'm becoming the surf movie premiere guy. But Taylor was my baby. Yeah. I saved the tours for Taylor, but the one-offs were like Aaron Solis, Noel Salas. They did a High Volume. I think they had a movie. And I would put bands on, and that's kind of how it all started for me. And along the way, I think where you and Tom might have became good friends was when we went to Hawaii.
Well, we had STV.
STV.
We had STV,
Halloween, yeah.
And they had Peter King interview them in our garage. Remember?
That's right.
And he's hitting their heads while they're trying to sing
I have
their
pictures
song.
of this Halloween party that you guys threw, where I think you had a straw hat.
Wasn't that my 20th birthday where we got kicked out of the house? Yeah, it was my 20th birthday.
Was that it?
I had in the backyard of the STV house in Pacific Beach.
Okay.
And on my 20th birthday, Unwritten Law opened and Blink finished, and we had a cake, and we all got all caked up. Yeah. And the next morning, the landlord kicked my whole family out of the house, and Tom was still there, and he's like, "Sorry," like it was hilarious.
But the key thing,
and then I had to move in with him. Remember, that's how I moved in with him.
The key thing you said there for me as a promoter and someone is placing stuff, you have this most crazy up and coming influential surfer. His 20th birthday party. Every pro surfer's there. And who are the bands that played your party?
Unwritten Law and Blink.
See?
Yeah.
I that's what I did.
That's what you did.
Every move that you guys made, I made sure I had music.
Yeah.
And that's how I grew it, dude.
Yeah. It's so funny. So we got kicked out of our family house, and Tom wanted to move from Poway, and he was tired of being out there, and he goes, "Hey, you want to get a place together?" And I remember going, "Not really. Like, I don't want to live in PB. I was traveling the world, and I was like, I go, why? What are you thinking? And he goes, let's get a place in PB. We got it right by the freeway, Bella Pacific. And I remember we walked into we were both 20, because it was when I got kicked out on my 20th birthday, I had to find a new house. And we go into the lady that rents the place. And I remember sitting down with Tom. I can't wait to do our podcast together and talk about this. I remember us looking at the lady, and she goes, okay, so what do you do? And I go, I'm a pro surfer. And she goes, all right, I need your mom's signature. And then he goes, well, I'm in a rock band. I'm in a band. I'm in a something. And she goes, I'm going to need your mom's signature too. And he goes, but I work at GNC. And she's like, yeah, I need your mom's signature. And the best part about this situation, and it's like one of those movies, he got the ding-a-ling-ding Eminem song. It's all ding-a-ling-ding like that. It came out on 91X out of nowhere because the college kids voted it was the most catchy song or whatever.
Well, Mike Halloran had something to do with that.
Yeah, so you know the inside of that.
Yeah.
But all I knew is it came on, and I had a Sidekick, one of those phones that flipped up like that. And I got a phone call from Mark, and I had like this little race car. Remember that black race car?
Yeah.
And I remember I thought at that moment I was killing it, and Tom wasn't yet.
Yeah.
So I had the coal car.
He drove the red Nissan pickup.
It was a Nissan pickup. And this is what Tom used to do. Tom used to put the tailgate down in the truck to save gas mileage.
Yeah.
This is a man that now has a mansion in the thing.
Yeah.
But the best was he goes, hey, turn on 91X. And I remember turning it on. It's all bing, ding, 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 ding. And I'm like, oh, it's on the radio. And I got chicken skin. When we flew into Bella Pacific, this little apartment building, I remember pulling by the host's lady, and she's going like this.
No way.
She heard it too. And I'm like, and I see her, and he's at the house, and I pull up to the house, and I'm like, oh, and I remember thinking to ourselves, and I think you came over later too, because he would show up every day. You were the guy behind the guy.
Half a mile.
He would come over every day.
Yeah, what's up? What's up,
hey,
dudes?
what's up, guys? And
early,
I remember,
too.
Yeah, early. And we hated me and fucking Tom.
But you were
sleep.
a surfer. I was a surfer. You were the only surfer that didn't want to surf Dawn Patrol.
I hated it early mornings.
Gosh.
But that was the best time, having this guy come and annoy us, and Tom making it. And I've never seen anything like it. You go, all right, these guys are going to make it. And I remember you putting all your chips in.
I did.
You quit your other job, and you're all, I'm in.
Yeah.
And to see, I know not to fuck the momentum thing, but it was like the first time any of our friends' bands, all of it, like Pennywise, Unreal, all of them are big. But that was a moment in time where it was like one of our guys made it.
Yeah.
It made it on a level where I remember being in Australia a year after he made it. He got his little house in Encinitas. So it was like 300 grand. We're like, yeah.
265,000.
Okay.
I remember.
And I remember in Australia when they got their first, because they got a cover of Rolling Stones there first, I think. And they're on the cover like this. And I remember I'm shaking because I can't believe how cool it was. And I remember in the airport having my, like in Walkman, and I'm like playing it and I look and I go, and they were on the cover of Rolling Stones, literally out of nowhere, too, because it wasn't like they were big time. It was just like all of a sudden they were the biggest band in the world.
So the cover of Rolling Stone magazine was actually shot, if I recall, in Florida.
Was it? It was like at the beach or something.
It was shot at the beach, and I believe that was right around 1999. And I was in Hawaii with Blink, and we were celebrating, I think, maybe the cover. And I remember when we got it, and I remember Tom burned his arm real bad. We were on one of those Waikiki booze cruises, and he leaned up against a smokestack, and he burned his arm really bad. I felt so bad for him.
But you got to see that all firsthand.
Yeah, I want to rewind.
Yeah, go for it.
Because that was when Travis was in the band.
Right.
The stuff we're talking about, Scott Rayner's still in the band.
Scott.
Okay?
I got that phone call when he broke his legs. He called Tom's house and both his ankles were broke.
Yeah.
And remember, his girlfriend was on the phone screaming and yelling, crying. And I was like, looks like your drummer's out, bro.
Yeah.
That was not a good situation.
I just remember, here's a couple funny things related to your apartment. Okay. So you got to understand, I just got married. I was living a half a mile away, Chalcedony Street, Pacific Beach. We all hung out at Pacific Drive. Mm-hmm. It was so cool, man.
It was the coolest time.
I still pay. Me and Christian Conforti were talking about how great that era was.
It was the best.
We were so lucky in how we both found our ways to being a part of this whole thing. Right. And we signed a publishing deal. Blink signed a publishing deal because their song, Damn It, was doing really good, which I'm in the video.
Deal, the MCA deal?
What?
Is a publishing deal
A publishing
different?
means you basically lease your songs out to a company sort of for a certain amount of years for a certain amount of money.
Right.
And then they take those songs and go and place them and mark them up to like Pepsi and Honda and whatever. And then once they recoup the advance, so say I think they gave us, I don't remember what it was. I just remember my cut was $15,000.
Wow.
Okay. That was my 15. It was my first thing.
Big check, yeah.
My first thing. So Tom might have got like 30 or 40,000. I don't remember the numbers. It was something like that, right? So he's like, I'm so excited. Oh my gosh. Like all of a sudden, this dude who worked at GNC, loading concrete trucks, Fire Academy dude, punk rocker kid, he's got money all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And so the first, guess what he goes out and buys? The first thing he buys, he calls me up. He's like, dude, you got to come over to the apartment. This is where you live. Oh, right. He's all, I went to Circuit City and blew all my money on a stereo.
And the stereo is like one of those ones that you go to like a Goodwill and you're like, who bought those stupid things? And I got an Ethan Allen couch and we both bought this stereo. And I remember the stereo was so corny.
Yeah, you two were so obsessed with Ethan Allen.
We had Ethan Allen couches because we grew up with no money. And in the stereo, we bought it. I remember that shit. Like
I'm sitting here going like, you bought, wait, what?
It's like a $1,500 stereo. We're like,
so what I did with my money was I called Betty Steele, Taylor Steele's mom, and I said, I want to buy a house, and I got 15 grand I can put down. So she finds me my house in Cardiff for $196,000. I put my deposit down. I was working at Reef in Arnett. I was a team manager there, and I'm managing Blink. Uh-huh. And I bought my first house with my money.
Right.
Tom bought a stereo.
And we were living together, and his 21st was just after that. We went to the open bar in PB, and then we both got drinking poison, whatever you call it.
I remember that.
And we were throwing up. His mom made us a pot roast. This story is unbelievable. And I liked pot roast before that night. And it was a pot roast that, cooks in a crock pot. And all night long, we're throwing up this crock pot, the stew or whatever they're called, pot roast. And I'm puking, and we had bathrooms right by here, and we're both, whoa! And I could hear him, whoa! And I never had pot roast since. I've never had a pot roast. The smell makes me sick. And it's so funny because I remember you coming to check on us, and we're like, I don't want to be alive.
I remember that. You guys were so... And, in deep down, I was still hoping you were going to paddle out with me that morning. But I want to say one more funny story, and I might get in trouble for this, but I don't even care.
Yeah, I don't
Freaking, it's been years now.
I just told the people in the world that I got caught by Taylor Still 3 times jerking off. That's why I know he's one of my best friends.
Oh, wow.
But you never caught me, so we're not
I never caught
close.
you, but so I rolled over as usual around 7:30 in the morning. I was always at your house at like 7:30 in the morning. I'm knocking on the door, no one's answering. And so I'm out in the parking lot. I'm like, hey. And Tom's window, your window faced the freeway, which, by the way, every time I would drive to Arnett, I would always yell out your name, Benji, as I was getting on the freeway. I don't know if you ever heard me.
Every time I go into PB now, I look up and I go, that motherfucker.
Yeah. So, but anyways, sorry, guys. I'm Tom and Jan. So, I'm like, hey. And all of a sudden the window opens and it's just Tom's face. And all I could see was it. And he was like moving kind of funny. So something was going down, and below he was
getting a little action.
It was his soon to be wife, and mother of his children.
Yeah.
But I remember he's like, I'm busy right now. Like, it was so funny to me because it was like, old people go to work and everything, and Tom's like, his hair's bleached out. It was so funny.
Oh, that's so good.
But then he made money, and damn, it did really good, and our tour started doing good, and we went on the Good Times tour.
Yeah, we did.
Which was Taylor's movie, and that was when we were in first night again. Blink's on the Good Times tour with 7 Seconds. I forgot, and it was probably Pennywise again. And Tom gets arrested in Jacksonville, Florida.
What was that for?
Night one, for drinking, underage drinking.
Oh, no.
So, first night on tour, Tom goes to jail. I've never been to Jacksonville, Florida. and I'm with the promoter. His name's Danny Wimmer, who now is one of the biggest promoters in the world.
Is he?
Massive.
Oh, no.
And I'm sitting in the jailhouse trying to bail Tom out at like 2 a.m. for drinking. And there's a picture. I have it somewhere.
Is that the night of he had to play that night?
Blink just played the Good Times tour.
Oh, you mean it was after he played?
Yeah. The show was over, and he was out talking to girls, and
and
he was drinking, and he got arrested. And I have a show of him in the cop car, a picture in the cop car, handcuffs. But every night, it was just bizarre, those first nights, because everyone just went so big.
Yeah.
And things like that happened. The same thing happened to us when we took the Good Times tour to Australia. That one was heavy.
I heard about
that.
I've seen footage of that one.
That one was so radical, dude. But Taylor and Pennywise allowing Blink to be on the Good Times tour in Australia is actually where Blink-182 broke first in the world. The label got behind it. Cargo Records had a deal with Mushroom Records, and being a surfing culture country, they got it, and we were back. That was in December of 95. By May of 96, we were headlining our own tour.
Wow.
In clubs.
And that was before America anything.
They were getting played on the radio and broke on the radio, and we were selling out clubs in 96 in Australia doing a club tour.
Wow.
And I remember driving through Australia and surfing and meeting, all the pros were gone. It was now I'm just hanging out with locals.
I do remember the Australia tour being just you, Taylor, Pete Santa Maria,
all
the bands, and no servers.
Dude, it was so fun.
It looked like
it was in Fletcher Snuck.
You guys on the beach trying to tan. I remember Tom and that one clip of Tom with the magazine of the guy buff. He's like, that was me last year. All that stuff. I kind of was bummed I wasn't there because that was the stuff I wanted to be.
It was iconic. And Taylor and I shared a room. And, it was Andy Summers did the deal for us. So we're going around, and Taylor got paid $500 for the movie. I got paid $500, I think, for producing. And I got Blink and Pennywise, and we toured. We were playing all these places, and it was a dream. And I remember we would ask, hey, is there any surfers here that want to take us surfing in the morning? Because we all brought boards. And that was when Tom surfed.
Yeah, Tom
You
was a
did.
surfer for
I
a
surfed
minute.
with Tom in
When
Japan.
he lived with me, he would actually put a suit on and go surfing with me.
You know, Gomez would give us suits, and Bob Hurley and Paul were such supporters of Blink. They gave us tour support for that tour.
Yeah.
They paid for our plane tickets, Bob and Paul.
You don't realize that Billabong had a lot to do with Blink's success in the early days.
Gosh.
In the early days, that was a big deal. I mean, that. And then when they started Hurley, I mean, when Hurley switched over, they were their biggest client.
Well, so here's some surf history. It was Hurley started, I think, in 99.
It was 99.
Okay. So that summer of 99, Bob calls me and he's like, hey, Rick, we want to come down and talk to you and bring the Blink guys. So at this point, Blink are wearing, they're endorsed. They're sponsored by Billabong.
The knitted sweaters.
Talking about the stickers we talked about earlier, they were very hard to get. Like those Billabong team stickers, Gomez gave me stickers.
Yeah.
And he's all, put these on your board. I don't care how good you surf.
Rad.
And it was like, dude, being part of this club, showing up with Poston, and there's Keith and Dan and you, and like, I mean, it was, you know, Quicksilver, I think, had like the world tour guys, but you guys were like cooler.
Yeah, wait.
Kelly was a legend, but
Kelly was detached at that point. It was just
kind of
he was in our
detached.
crew, but he was like driven. And
he was, you know, he was winning world titles, and you guys were just all about getting clips.
Yeah.
And you know, I remember watching. I think it might have been Focus. Like, there's that wave in Hawaii, in the Big Island, where Shane gets up, pulls in, gets this crazy barrel, and comes out. You know, I'm like, what? But it was like head high.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can do that. You know, and I just remember all that stuff. And Bob and Paul were so influential. But back to my story here. I don't know how I get sidetracked, but so they come down for a barbecue. And so we're barbecuing. Here's Mark, Tom, and Scott, Paul, me, my wife, Julie. I think Ryder, my son, was maybe 6 months old. And like, so we want to tell you about something. And dude, you got to understand, from this point, this is 99, the first surf shirt I ever bought in my life was Only a Surfer Knows the Feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
I bought it in 83 at a surf shop, Glen Canyon Surf Shop, Woodland Hills. Billabong to me was
the pinnacle.
Was the pinnacle of brands. Mm-hmm. So here comes, we're so proud. Everyone's wearing their Billabong. I mean, we had carte blanche. They just come to the warehouse. They didn't even count us out.
The amount of clothes we got from them was embarrassing.
I mean, I'm talking like you'd walk out with 85 things.
Yeah, yeah.
You know how much? 85 pieces of clothing. Like it's gnarly, right? And he's like, we want to tell you something. So we're gonna start our own brand. And I was so confused.
Yeah, it was such a weird feeling because I was in the middle of it.
I had to
sign
right.
New Billabong or stay with them. And I hate to say it, but I was a Billabong guy through and through. But I loved Hurley more than Billabong. But it was a time.
It was like a it was a change.
No one did anything like that. Like Bob was such a trendsetter that it was like, you're going to do what?
He was a trendsetter, you know. And so Bob and and I'm sitting here. I was really bummed. I was sad. I was bummed. I'm like, wait, Billabong, like what? Hard. Like this is now my identity. We worked so hard, but the people were bigger than the brand.
Exactly.
You know. And so, well, you know what? We're like, hey, man, whatever you say.
Right.
Now, this is before Blink wrote Enema of the or it was
during the
or
MMA
maybe it was close. Maybe it was close by. Yeah. Maybe it was really close by. But Enema of the State had just started coming out, and there was a song on that record called All the Small Things. Yeah. And wait, am I getting my records all right?
No, it's
there's a lot of records. I might have to check myself.
I do remember them wearing Billabong, and they weren't
big yet. No, dude.
And then when they got into Hurley,
it was because
like,
Take Off Your Pants and Jacket was the big follow-up to Enema of the State. Okay, and so the big song on that record was All the Small Things, and that song crossed over to pop top 40. So we're all, yeah, Bob, we're in. We got your back. So All the Small Things comes out. Now, these are you got to understand, Mark and Tom were iconic at the Warped Tour for wearing Billabong shirts. Both of them wore it. Scott wore it. It was, Gomez did a great job.
Yeah, he did.
He listened to us. He even paid us, man. We were getting like $500 a month.
Right.
Like a surfer.
No, 100%.
Like Justin Poston or something. And so here's my band. wearing this clothing, and we had no idea what was about to come. And they wrote a song called All the Small Things, which I remember Tom played for me in his house that he bought for $265,000 on the staircase. He's like, dude, listen to this riff. And it was about his, at the time, wife, Jen. Right. And I'm like, that's a hooky. Oh
yeah.
So that song blows up. This is when MTV still mattered.
Yeah,
it was towards the end of their life, but it still mattered. It gets nominated for an MTV VMA. Now, if you guys know what that is, which you might not know, I don't know. The new VMAs are so weird to me. I don't even watch anymore. But it's like, it was a big honor, and it was like best new song. And they asked us if we would play the awards. So I fly to Radio City Music Hall, and I'm like, they don't tell you though. We just knew we were nominated. And so I get with MCA Records, who we signed to after Cargo, and we get with the marketing director, and we're like, we want to do something crazy for this thing. So we hire. Is this a PC show?
No.
Will I get canceled?
I just told you I jerked off in front of Taylor Steele 3 times. That's how I know he's a good friend of mine.
Well, we hire. At the time, it was like okay to say this stuff. We hired like 30 midgets.
Yeah, I do remember.
Now they're called little people.
Little people.
But back then, you called them midgets.
Yeah.
And so we flew all these midgets on the plane, and they got drunk, and they were so mean.
So whose idea was it?
That actually came. It might have been Mark.
Yeah,
or Tom. I don't remember, but we got it approved. So I'm on the plane, and they were yapping so loud. They sounded like bumblebees.
30 little people, and they're drunk. What? This is all the small things. Like,
it was
real.
all the small things, right? So we fly to New York with a bunch of drunk. They were mean. They were like slapping the stewardess. Like they were so gnarly, dude. I mean, I might say that, but what they were doing was way worse than what I just called them.
Right.
Which whatever. But that's what everyone called them.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. That. I don't call them that anymore. But whatever. So anyway, so the thing was well, Blink is playing All the Small Things in the finale part of the song. All these little people start flying in on like they're getting flown in. They're just flying in. And we're sitting, I'm watching this in Radio City Music Hall. I'm watching my band that I started with. I signed them sight unseen. We've toured around, surf tours. We've got naked together.
Everyone in the crowd
drunk.
is famous.
Everyone's famous. I'm sitting next to Britney Spears, Limp Bizkit. This was at that time. Yeah. I mean, it was literally... I don't know how to say it, but, like Pink and Christina Aguilera. I mean, all of a sudden, we're rolling with these people. Yeah, so and we're random. So wrong because we have no business being with these people at all. And here's the most iconic part about it. Mark and Tom are wearing Hurley shirts.
That helped the brand so
They're wearing Hurley shirts at one of the most viewed MTV VMA awards ever. And we won the award.
That is so insane.
And I jumped up, I screamed. You can see me I'll never forget that.
That's such an
I also remember,
moment.
I think I passed a kidney stone in the urinal that night too.
Well, that's a bigger moment than all.
It was very
that's
painful.
A small thing.
It's very painful. Yeah, big thing coming out of a small thing. But I just remember it was just so crazy. And that was on, I think it was on a Thursday or Friday, and I flew home, and ASR San Diego was going on. And I made it at like 2 or 3. Remember the last day of ASR?
Yes. You had to get there, or everyone was moving out.
Everyone, before it became this party, and everyone started giving away stuff. Yeah. And it was just like I had to be there because ASR is like, it was like you had to go to every ASR.
Everyone.
And I ran up to the Billabong booth, and everyone got up and gave me like a standing ovation and cheered me and hugged me at the Hurley booth. Yeah. Because it was on television. Yeah. And Hurley's sales from that point literally went like skyrocketed. Yep. And I remember that following year, Blink, we did our first like big arena tour. And we're sitting in like Minneapolis, and we're pulling up to the venue in our bus, and there's Hurley shirts in Minneapolis, in Cleveland, everywhere we went. Hurley, Blink fans bought Hurley shirts.
Right.
And it was so great to that all the love they showed us in 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, and in 99.
They got it all paid back.
We gave it back to them.
Yeah.
And so I remember I was out on tour, And my wife calls me, and she's like, Rick, we just got a FedEx from Bob Hurley. And I'm like, well, whoa, what's that? I think I was at a festival or something. I forgot where I was. I was with Blink. And she's like, it's a check from Bob Hurley for $100,000. And he says, thank you.
Wow. That is so dope.
So Mark, Tom, and I, we all got these thank you checks for $100,000.
So cool. I mean, you deserved every minute of it, but
I never,
just no one else does that but Bob Hurley.
I never, ever thought of that, ever even thinking like that. Yeah. I was so happy because he sold the Nike and he got paid and it was really cool. And Gomez got taken care of and all the people that believed in Bob got taken care of. And it was just so cool. And then I remember they put me on payroll for $1,000 a month for years.
That's so cool.
And they flew me to Tavarua 7 times. And I don't know, it was like, how did this kid from Woodland Hills who threw this party at his high school make it all the way to the top?
Sitting next to Christina Aguilera,
sitting next
with little people flying through.
Britney Spears kissed my son Ryder. Jennifer Love Hewitt. I got invited. We were multiple times. I hung out with Kobe Bryant.
That's so cool.
And I remember we were on Kobe Bryant's. He had a celebrity bowling tournament in the Valley. And I was on his team. Mark was on his team. Jennifer Love Hewitt. Remember when she was like super big time? And I'm sitting here just getting to talk to Kobe Bryant and Britney Spears. And like, it was just like, how in the world did I make it? It would have
been fun to have a portrait of that and then show it to you right when you're starting.
You'll
be there one day. And you'll be like, yeah, right.
But you really do got to follow your passions and don't think about the money. Just think about if you're laughing and you're having fun. I mean, look what Taylor just pulled off this weekend. Yeah. It was a beautiful event at Seaside. The film festival was amazing. And what he did with you guys on stage, for me, I was just, I was right up there throwing lemons at you guys. And what was so cool, Timmy Curran, who I managed since he was 15 years old. Yeah. And Timmy's now 43 or something. Mm-hmm. And I helped Timmy get in a lot of these movies. And he was another person I managed who he plays me a demo in his garage one day, in my car. We were surfing Silver Strand. He's all, listen to this demo. And I listened to it and I go, oh, that guy's pretty good. Who is that? And he's like, you know him. And I'm like, I don't know him. And he's all, it's me. So fast forward, I packaged him together with like Green Day's manager, Pat Magnarella, and Billy Joe Armstrong had a label called Adeline. I get him to sign Timmy Curran. And VH1 was popular. He writes this great record.
Right.
Timmy was a big deal.
Yeah.
He was a big deal for a while there.
That's so
and
cool.
His song goes to #1 on VH1. What? And I get him on tour with the Foo Fighters.
Oh, that's so neat.
So I was like, I felt so stoked on my career because I was taking my love for surfing. Yeah. I started managing Timmy when he was 15. And then I became his team manager at Reef. And I became a team manager at Arnett. Yeah. And then we kind of went away for a while. And then I bought a house in Oxnard. And he finds me 3 or 4 years later after our Reef, after I got laid off. They told me, they're like, hey, you either do Reef team surf manager in the wakeboarders or Blink. Pick one. Oh, yeah. I'm like, dude, I just made my whole salary in 1 month. Yeah. I do this because I love this. Chris Cote was my assistant.
Yeah.
Chris Cote was my assistant at Arnett. I hired him. My assistant at Reef. And I got him to become Travis Barker's drum tech for Blink.
I remember that.
I mean, everything I had, I brought all my bros in.
Yeah.
And so Timmy goes on and he starts selling clubs out. And it was so great. I did the same thing with Makua Rothman.
You must be so happy about
I love my story. I'm proud of it. I feel like, and now here I am years later, and I don't manage Blink anymore. I don't manage Pennywise anymore. I don't manage Newfound Glory or anything like that. But I do manage some young bands called the Aquadolls, who just played at Taylor's.
Yeah.
And you know what? And I didn't even call Taylor. He called me to have my band play, cool. Which that was my biggest compliment, one of my biggest compliments in my career, that here I'm taking this band that I envisioned being the next Go-Go's. It's one of my favorite bands. I had this vision, but what started me with that was when the whole Blink thing went away, and I remember, because I live in Catalina every summer, Catalina Island, and Tom called me. He's like, hey, dude, I think, we don't need a manager, anymore. I'm doing To the Stars, and, I got a family, and I'm not doing really things anymore, This was like 3 or 4 years ago. I'm like, dude, it's all good. Yeah. I'm so grateful for my life. I was able to buy a home. I was able to
You're the only manager for bands that I've ever seen that had zero money in their mind. It was never, you always think of the agent standing in the back give me the money, give me the money. Yours was you were just always happy to be there, and you're always smiling and trying to make everyone around you facilitate their success. And I got to see it firsthand, the whole experience.
You saw everything, dude.
I saw it all.
My
and
whole
then
career.
See Tim Curran the other night at the festival get the recognition that he deserves, and see him hey, it's all good, bro. He's the sweetest, most humble person, and I knew that you were probably just so happy.
Timmy Curran was
his
another
night.
Baby for me. I had Timmy Curran open for Angels and Airwaves in Hawaii and other shows. And I had him open for Angels and Airwaves, I think, in LA. Switchfoot, Timmy Curran was my baby because he was a pro surfer, and I got him in his very first surf film. Yeah. The alley-oop, actually, Taylor did not document that first. It was Aaron Solis, because Casey Fleming worked for Quicksilver with Willie Morris, and they had Timmy. It was before he signed to Billabong.
Right.
And, or maybe it was after. I can't remember who was first.
Right,
Billabong
but you were his biggest fan and manager and everything.
And at 15, and I remember I met Timmy at Wainimi, and he was just a little kid. Yeah. And we go surf Wainimi. This is where I had already put on all these high school contests where the locals and was so gnarly, but he was a real local.
Right.
And I remember he going down the line, and he pops this alley-oop, which wasn't even called an alley-oop. It wasn't even a thing, and none of us even knew what to say. There was a front-side air. Yeah. Or a backside air. At Malibu, where I grew up surfing, there was a surfer there, Ricky Schaefer, and he went on, he did Bud Tour events and stuff. He was a standout Malibu surfer, and he did backside airs. It was just boom, But then Tim Curran does this alley-oop, in an inverted kind of situation. So it just, I geeked so hard, and then I became his team manager, and then I became Rob's team manager, and I'm promoting all these movies, and I'm Keith Malloy, Dan Malloy. I'm traveling to France with Danny, Pete Rocky. I mean, dude, I was in heaven.
You had the best run ever.
My wife was a Roxy model.
Yeah,
remember?
She was.
She was the original Roxy models.
Oh my God.
She was one of them.
I completely remember
did
that.
it for 5 years, and she modeled all the way up till she was 4 or 5 months pregnant.
I remember being in Florida at the Disney World water thing, and she was modeling for Roxy.
Yeah.
I totally remember that now. Yeah.
So
his wife is the coolest lady in the
I just
world.
felt like I have this super hot babe, which I've been with her since high school, and we were she's in the industry. Quicksilver's flying her to Orlando, and I'm getting flown there by Reef, and we're on Southwest, so we had
away from each other.
But that's when I met the Conforties, and 17 was going to be born somewhere around this time, where you guys all started that company, 17. Yeah. And I don't know, man. It was really cool. But why I talked about Timmy Curran. So I was sitting in the front row the other night at La Paloma, watching you guys throwing shit at you. But as Timmy's talking, his image, he's getting his due. And guess who's in the front row watching him is his son, Ollie Curran.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, dude, who just got 4th in the NSSA at Gold Coast. And he reminds me so much of my son, Ryder, it's scary. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, this is the next generation of momentum. This is what it's all about. And I then proceeded to take my popcorn bucket and pour it all over Ollie. and it was just really cool.
That is so insane to think about that first night of Pennywise at that theater, about my first joke that I say on stage about Paul Gomez diving off. And everyone, the sea partying and him hitting the ground and then literally lying there for a while. We thought he died.
Yeah.
And I was 16. I was just like, did he die? That's a big scary guy. And
the Indian.
And that started, and then 2 nights ago, we're sitting in the same place watching Timmy's little kid.
Yeah.
And Yeah,
And you
we're
know,
so lucky.
and Paul, he's been struck. He was in a
It would be
bad.
cool if you came.
Yeah, he was in a bad accident down to my house in Mexico on a quad, and you know he's recovering. But he reposted it, and you know, you guys know Benji's doing stand-up comedy, and for me, I thought it was really cool. I remember I got there, I'm like, everyone's like, what's up? I'm like, yeah, but when does Benji go on? When's Benji? And Ollie Curran and all of them are like, oh, he goes on in like 30 minutes. I'm like, I learned not to trust people.
Yeah.
And I went in and you're on.
Oh.
So luckily I got to catch it. But what was so cool about your comedy, and I need to talk to you about this, making fun of the pro surfers is so great.
Yeah.
It's so funny. That to me is going to be one of your strongest weapons.
Yeah,
you know,
well,
I'm
Rob,
sure you got some regular
Rob
jokes.
won't be there anymore because I always
That's
go.
okay.
I go after him. But Kelly, when I said it's so nice to have the greatest surfer of all time, because he just walked in,
Yeah.
and I go, Kalani Rob,
Yeah.
and Kelly sat down and looked at Kalani like, is he kidding?
Yeah, and
so
Kalani, it was good to catch up with Kalani, and
yeah.
he was really stoked. Yeah. But one of the funniest things you ever said, that it was on a drive-thru or something, you made fun of Martin Potter, who I never met, but y'all, Harry Potter. You called him Harry Potter. I still this day think that was one of the funniest things you ever said.
That's pretty funny.
But I remember those things. Yeah. But yeah, dude, Taylor, you know, through his creativity and great eyes of spotting talent, helped me manage Blinks and Unwritten Laws and put tours together. He believed in me and getting that check from Bob Hurley and meeting Bob Hurley and going to Tavarua trips and watching Ollie Curran and watch his dad. I mean, dude, I've had such a rad career. I can just drop the mic now and just be like, that's it. But I'm not done.
Not even close.
I've got these new bands, the Aquadolls, and sitting on Stacy, and I'm 53, about to turn 54. My daughter comes up to me, JC, and about 3 years ago, after I just got the call from Tom, and it was like a week later, and she's like, hey, Dad, I want to do what you do. And I was like, wait, what? She's like, I want to get into music. I want to start promoting. And she's been a yogi. Like, she was like this youngest yogi in the United States. She got really famous in the yoga space. But she asked to work in the music industry. So I'm like, all right, let's go. So we came up with a plan. We found this band called the Aquadolls, this girl band from Orange County. I love surf guitar kind of sound. I had this vision of finding the next Go-Go's, which led me to sitting on Stacy, who's been on tour with the Jonas Brothers. I just got, the Aquadolls just got off tour with Incubus and Sublime. My daughter's their tour manager. She's completely getting courted by all these people about music and industry. So I'm getting this like third wind, this rebirth, and I'm out here driving the van, carrying cases, loading out in Baltimore, chasing crackheads off. I'm going out on tour with 6 girls.
It is so next level.
And
that's the movie.
I love it, dude.
That's the movie.
I'm driving because I don't trust them. They're horrible drivers.
Yeah.
Aquadolls are horrible drivers. Scary. They cry. They cry trying to pull into an In-N-Out burger. I got them on tour.
What a different vibe than Pennywise. I went touring with them.
I got 2 years ago, I got the Aquadolls to open for Pennywise in Arizona. Dude, I don't stop. All right.
So awesome.
Jim got me on, and they actually went over really well. Because all the punkers were like, they didn't know what to say. There's girls. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you suck?
I know.
No, you don't do that these days. You get kicked out. So that's what I'm doing, dude. And I'm still surfing every day. And as soon as I find out your new address, I'm going to wake you up and go dolphin tanks.
Best way to end the interview is having you pass the baton off to your daughter.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, I'm going to interview Ryder soon, and we won't say anything more because I had Mark Healy tell me he's like the Kelly Slater of freediving. And when he said that, and Mark Healy is freaking unbelievable, when he said that your kid was that good at it, I was just like, is he really? And that kind of acknowledgement from that guy like Mark Healy, I was just like, wow, Ryder is a gnarly ocean goer, man. He gets bluefin tuna with a spear 300 feet down.
Well, not that far down. But
I don't even know how far. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
I know Ryder can hunt. This is without scuba tanks.
Yeah.
He's hunted at 115 feet for 30 seconds. So if you can even understand, like, dive down 10 feet and you're pulling, your head feels like it's going to explode. So, yeah. No.
I mean, they go down to the bottom and sit there.
Mark Healy is a great mentor for Ryder. He's done great things for him.
Look up Rick DeVoe on Instagram and just sit back and enjoy.
Yeah,
there's some of the coolest things you'll ever see.
There's some explicit content. If you're going to see a lot of dead fish, he gets hate. He gets people like, "How can you kill that animal?"
You're like, "What did you eat for lunch?" They're like, "Never mind."
But thank you.
Great family, great father, great
Thanks, brother.
friend, great manager.
I love you, Benji.
You are one of the greatest dads I've ever met in my life, and I love you to death. And what a great story of this is one of the most iconic punk human beings in the world. And you just heard,
I don't think so,
just heard an hour of a little bit of tidbits, but it's way bigger and way crazier. When I have Tom and Mark in here, they're coming up in the next couple weeks and months.
Killer.
They're gonna have ideal stories that match up, and it's
you need to get Jim and Fletcher in here.
I had Jim on the first one.
Oh, you did.
Jim Lindbergh was the very first.
Oh, you know what? I did know that. I did remember.
I did
that,
Bob Hurley, Jim Lindbergh, and Donovan on the very first one.
Good.
But I didn't do well. My audio was a little whacked. A lot of things went wrong, but just the fact that I'm nailing down the '90s punk world that I grew up in.
Don't forget
fun.
Gomez.
Gomez is coming in hot.
Yeah,
we got to get him.
Paul has the other.
I did Bob Hurley too.
Yeah,
on that first one. Yeah, Bob Hurley's legend. But hey,
I love you, Benji.
It was a pleasure to have you on Let's Poddy. Thank you guys for watching, listening. Bye.